What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, and joining me is Jordan Ellis. Jordan, how you doing today, mate?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. We had a card this weekend past, which was Holm versus Aldana, a fight night card. I had quite low expectations going into this one for especially the main event, but I'll tell you what, that was probably the best performance I've seen from Holly Holm in a long time, if not her best performance ever. What were your thoughts on the card as a whole and that main event?
Yeah, the card as a whole was decent. It was, I do think the main event was kind of the show stealer. I think Holly Holm looked fantastic, as you said. Maybe better than ever besides that Ronda Rousey, performance. It was vintage. Like, it was just perfect from every start to finish. She was dominant. I expected her to win, but I expected her to kind of outpoint Aldana and, get it that way. It wouldn't be as clean cut and as impressive as it was, but she was just fantastic.
I agree. I think when I was watching it at the start, I thought it'd been wise for Holm to push her against the cage and do what she's been doing. But as the fight went in, even after that first minute, the threat from Aldana just seemed to disappear. She just had no opportunities. Holm was circling off the entire time, not giving her a chance to get in boxing range and land anything. And just, doing beautiful stuff with her kicks and just putting on a showcase, to be honest. And that's what she needed to do because at this point, the top of the women's bantamweight division, there's like levels to it, in my opinion, right? So you got Nunes, who seems to be miles above everyone, and then you got fighters like Holm and Durandamir, who we'll get to in a little bit, who just seem to be the best in the division that aren't champions, and they seem to just be stopping these up and comers. Like, they can't get a prospect through, like Aldana or Espinel was another one they were trying to build up. None of these prospects can seem to be getting through to a title shot because you have these crafty veterans just holding the top of the division.
Yeah, and there is a massive gap between Holm and Aldana, and we've seen that. It was bigger than a lot of people anticipated. I know Holm was a slight favourite going in, but Aldana just didn't have anything for her. She didn't get the finish, but her killer instinct was there. And as the rounds picked up, Holm was picking up her power. She was picking up output. She was dangerous towards the end of that fight, and Aldana was hanging on really. And Holm mixed in wrestling. She's known as a boxer, a kickboxer, but she just had too much all over in terms of mixed martial arts ability. So it's just fantastic from Holm, and I'm sure a lot of people will bemoan her getting another title shot, but that was a perfect performance, and it kind of sets up now for her against GDR, where the winner of that gets a title shot. And I know they've already had them, and they've both already been handily beat by Nunes, but they're the best of the division, and you can't write off like women like that because people hang around for ages and then they can still rally. We've seen Bisping, he was so close to the top for so long, didn't look like he was going to win the belt, and then all of a sudden he gets his chance and he takes it. So you can't write off these women at all because they are so talented. In terms of Dana, I just do want to mention that from the opening bell, she didn't seem to have anything for Holm, and there was no plan B, there was no plan C. It was just falling around the cage, and I think there could have been more from a corner to help her and things like that. So she's got to go away and she's got to work on that because you can't just knock everyone out. People are going to be crafty, and Holm was putting it on it, so it's not like they can accuse Holm of running or avoiding fighting. She was, beating the brakes off her in the end. So Aldana's got, plenty to work to do, and she'll come back hopefully. And 135 is an exciting division, and it seems like we're set for another number one contender fight soon.
Yeah, and I mean, going into this, I thought the definite difference between their skill sets and what we would see would be the defined difference in the fight would be Holm's grappling, which did play a part in it, don't get me wrong. She took her down and she did really great work on the ground, actually. But even in the stand-up, where I thought it would be anyone's fight, I thought it was 50-50. It just wasn't. It just, Holm was too good at controlling the octagon and staying out of danger while getting in there and landing shots. And like you said, she didn't get tired. She didn't slow down towards the end. She actually put it on her hard as the fight went. In that fifth round, looked like she was going to get a finish there. She didn't get it, but, she didn't stop like a lot of people would do if they were up 3 rounds. They're going to coast the last 2. She kept going for the full 25 and secured herself a really impressive win.
Yeah, and it sounds like, she did get a lot of flack last time after the Raquel Pennington performance. It was boring. She held up against the cage, and she's better than that. And it seems like she's took that on board and come out like an absolute killer. Went up against this girl who everyone's afraid of. She's getting high real knockouts, and she just put it on. And she was boxing her head off. She was wrestling perfectly. It was a perfect performance. And, Holm going into this fight was probably looked down on as not really a potential contender anymore, but she definitely is. And I think, one more impressive win, another win like that, and I think everyone would be happy to see her get another shot at the title, which is not something I would have thought going into this fight. So just my hat off to her, because that was sensational stuff. And as I said earlier, probably the best performance since Rousey, and it was just perfect.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Before we talk about what Holm should do next, I think it's pretty obvious. So we'll jump down to a couple of fights before that one between Germaine de Randamie and Juliana Pena. And who could have seen that outcome happening? I don't think anyone would have cashed a bet on GDR getting a submission in that one. But, Slick, she's improved. She's come leaps and bounds with her grappling especially. And to pull off something like that on someone like Pena, who's such a good grappler herself, it's just testament to the improvement she's making. She obviously, coming out of both the Nunes fights, like the original one she lost and this most recent loss to Nunes, the grappling was the big difference there, right? On the feet, she gave Nunes good work on the feet. It was the grappling that really was the defining factor. And she's worked on it, and she pulls off a submission.
Yeah, it was great. I thought she started really well in the fight around me. I think she looked like she had the beating of Pena, but Pena was so tough, and she was just so determined and relentless. She managed to pull herself back into the fight, but I thought always the Randame looked a more classy fighter. But Pena was just really, she's pretty happy to just take punches on the chin just to get the body lock and try and get the takedown or land punches of her own. So it was really impressive. She started well, she finished well, and that submission was scary. It was super tight. It was super technical, and it was perfect. And she set herself up as well, for another big fight, because Pena, in my opinion, has got more credentials in terms of being a potential contender over Aldana. She has that one big signature win over Vieira, but that's it. Where Pena's been knocking about quite a while now. She's been a contender quite a while, so I think that's a huge win, huge statement, and to get your submission win like that is, it's perfect and more than it deserved, that 50k bonus.
And you've got to guess right now the UFC is going to make that matchup, the GDR versus Holm. They've already done it once. There was a bit of controversy, but de Randamie ended up with that win. And there just doesn't seem to be a contender that could fight for the title other than those two. And even those two, they both just lost to Nunes. They really, I guess they both just beat up-and-comers. But aside from that, neither one of them has made some big claim to the next title shot. So this is the fight to make right now, in my opinion. And the winner of that has to have a title shot next, unless someone crazy comes up and has 4 fights in 10 days or something and just jumps the rankings, but I can't see that happening. So I think that's the fight to make, and to be honest, I'm going to take GDR in that again, just because I think she's made improvements in her game, whereas Holm's still the same fighter she was when they first fought. She might have looked really good recently, but she's still the same fighter, so I would still take Germaine de Randamie in that fight.
I think it's definitely the fight to make, and it's too close to call. It all depends how they do it. Do they do it as a main event? Is that a main event people are going to want to tune into? I'm not sure it is, even after 2 impressive performances. It might just be over 3 rounds, and then who does that favour? It's going to be really close either way. Holm has clearly got the wrestling ability, and I think she may be able to utilise that and get it to the floor and kind of work her way through the fight. But I think it's a brilliant matchup. It's the number 1 contender fight, no doubt about it. I think the UFC would have preferred one of the up-and-comers, maybe one, and then they can present a new challenge to Nunes. I'm sure she's not too hyped to face either of these women. But it's huge. And I just want to put a side note on this, is that Dan Hardy was at cage side and he's still shouting at the referee about someone being unconscious. So I hope he does keep doing that, no matter what the UFC and, all the struggle with Herb Dean, because Pena was out for a little while before the referee noticed, and he noticed because Dan Hardy was shouting his head off at the cage side. So I think that's something he should be doing, and I think if you see it, you should be shouting it out. And obviously it's different because there's no crowd, but if you can help someone out in that situation, I think you should, as a ringside viewer. So that was just something to pick up on. But the Holm GDR fight, it's a 50-50 in my eyes. I could honestly, you play it 10 times, I think we'll get 5 winning one, 5 winning the other.
Yeah, it might be a bit like that. We'll jump on to another big fight of the night, probably the second biggest fight of the night, I'd say. Carlos Condit's comeback fight after I think his last win was in 2016 from memory. It's been a while, but he came back and he beat Court McGee, and he looked pretty good doing it. Like, he looked really good form. I know he didn't get to put him away, but, he definitely won the fight. Dropped him in that first round, broke his nose. McGee fixed his own nose in the corner like a champion, come out there with a straight nose. But, pretty dominant performance, wasn't it?
I think he looked fantastic, and obviously something to pick up on is the weird placement the UFC do with these cards. Carlos Condit, I know he's not what he used to be, but he's still a legitimate name, and to have Jorgen De Castro against Felipe co-main eventing when you've got Carlos Condit on the undercard is just ridiculous. And them two, especially Jorgen De Castro, he stunk out the gaff again. He doesn't seem to have any plan B at all. Like, if he doesn't knock it out, he's fucked basically. So he just needs to. It's a weird one for UFC. But back to Condit, he looked great, and we've seen a lot of these older guys, the Lawlers, the Woodleys, looking a bit gun shy, but he definitely weren't that, and he was cracking. Court McGee, he won convincingly. He knocked him over. He broke his nose. It was dominance, and I couldn't be happier because he's one of the nice guys in the sport. And I think five fight losing streak is just not becoming of what he is. He's been a world class talent for so long. I'm so happy to see him back in the win streak in the win column. And now he goes on and he can fight the Lawlers, the Diaz, the Browns, Sanchez, Cerrone's. There's so many options for him now. It's a great time to be a Condit
I like
fan.
all those matchups you just said, and I definitely think they should give him one of those guys, like another veteran like himself. Don't give him a young Henry Lyon. Don't give him a Kaz Machimaev or someone like that, a Jeff Neal. That would be not a good move for the UFC to do for Condit at this point in his career. Not to say he couldn't win. He could still definitely win those fights, but you're really, really give him a hard ask if you do that. So I think you give him one of those fights, like a Lawler. That's a good fight in my opinion. Or Nick Diaz, or Sanchez, or Cerrone. Yeah, I like all those fights, and I hope they give him something like that next.
Yeah, I just don't see the point in. It's not that he can't be a potential contender again. I just think build him up slowly. I think every one of them fights pays more money than fighting, Jeff Neal or someone like that. What's the point? So, as we were saying last time about the Veterans Division, let's make it unofficial. Let's not put anything on it. Another one there, Dan Hardy, they could potentially have a rematch. I know he's looking for one. Anthony Pettis is around. There's so many interesting fights that fans will tune in for. And I think all these guys can make money off each other and are similarly, matched. And it's just the way to go. It seems so obvious. I just don't see the point in making Sanchez against Jake Matthews or Condit against Jeff Neal. Be smart. Get these some nice fights, and we could have some really, really good fun with it over the next year or two.
Absolutely. Is there any other fights on the card you want to speak about, or you want to jump on to preview the next one?
No, not particularly. It was just them three, mainly.
Yeah, it wasn't the worst card, but definitely wasn't the greatest. Actually, I do want to shout out Kyler Phillips. He looked really good in his fight. Came out there and mauled Cameron Else in the first round. Then second round, Else came out and had nothing to offer.
Yeah, I actually had a bet on Else because I know he's like all those wins are in the first round, and he was 11-1 to get in the first round. So I thought if he's gonna get it, he's gonna get it here. And Kyler Phillips just had a bit too much for him. I think Else was kind of just looking for that one bomb, and he was just trying to take him out with one shot, and it weren't coming. And then by the second round, he was done. He was spent. And from speaking to him, he'd had zero preparation for the fight. He likes to train with Cerrone and them guys. He'd been stuck in England, and basically all he'd been doing is trying to shift the weight. He'd had 7 days notice. So it's one of them. You throw the dice, and he signed a multi-fight contract. He'll be back. But Kyler Phillips looked, sensational, and he was throwing some flips in there as well. So interested to see him fighting.
Yeah, impressive stuff. Well, we'll jump on to UFC Fight Night, Moraes versus Sandhagen, which is definitely a big contender for fight of the night. That's a bold call because this one might not go very long. But, both those guys are impressive. Both of them guys are strikers. I'm just super excited to see this fight.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting fight. It's kind of got the Holm Aldana vibe where you've got an established contender and someone on the rise who, still needs to prove himself a little bit. So in this one, I'm picking Moraes just because he did beat Jose Aldo officially anyway, although a lot of people don't agree with it. He did beat him, and he's kind of got that championship medal, whereas Sandhagen is true step up against Sterling. He got wiped out really quickly. So it's an interesting interesting matchup. It's all about if Sandhagen can rise to that level, and where is he? Is he a rising star? Does he still have work to do, or is he a true contender? And I guess we'll find out. But Marlon Moraes is as legit as it gets, and if you beat him, you've cracked it.
Yeah, the interesting thing here for me is I think Sandhagen is probably the more technical striker and probably the more crisp boxer. And on paper, he sounds like the better striker, in my opinion. This is my opinion. But Moraes throws crazy stuff and he's a finisher. He finishes people all the time. He'll hit you with something you don't see coming. And so I think in this fight, that's going to be the X factor. Can Sandhagen survive those first few rounds where anything can put him out, you know? After 2 rounds, this is a 5-round main event. After 2 rounds, I think Moraes is going to fade. I think after 2 rounds, Sandhagen should be able to just do whatever he wants and win out the last 3. But in those first 2 rounds, Moraes is going to come out there looking for the kill. And hey, you look at his record, he gets a lot. He gets a lot if it's through submission, if it's through knockout. He gets the finish. So it's a tough one for me to pick, but I think I will go Moraes as well, just because I think he's a finisher, whereas Sandhagen can finish people. But if he wins, I more likely see it being a decision win or a late TKO.
I think Sandhagen's kind of got to keep that distance for the first few rounds and just, stay out of range and keep your head as high as possible, because Moraes is going to be flinging legs up there. So just things like that. But it's a huge opportunity for Sandhagen, because he's coming off the back of quite a disappointing loss to Sterling. And as good as Sterling is, he really did get beat quite easily, and everyone thought it to be a really competitive fight, and it weren't. So he's come straight back into another huge fight, and he's fighting someone who potentially could then could go for the title with the win. Because I know Sterling's waiting for that title shot, but the UFC just don't seem willing to give him it. So if Moraes beats Sandhagen here, I wouldn't be surprised to see him jump the queue. It's this is a huge fight, and it's Sandhagen's got it all to play for. He doesn't seem to have taken a step back from that loss. He's right back in the mix, and it's up to him to prove himself worthy of this position. But Moraes is a tough ask for anyone, and that's why I'm giving him the edge in this fight.
I like to think that the UFC has already booked that Sterling versus Jan fight, because Sterling hasn't really been speaking about it on social media, so you got to think, right, the silence tells more than words would. But if they haven't, and Moraes goes out here and finishes Sandhagen in 1, I think you can see a number 1 contender fight happening, because obviously Sterling's got that loss to Moraes. Moraes finished him with a knee and put him out. I think it was the second round, start of the second round. So if he gets an impressive win over Sandhagen, the UFC is going to want to make that fight. I guarantee it. Unless they've already made Jan versus Sterling, and then they won't. I don't think they're going to give Moraes a title shot off this. I think if he fights up, it'll be against Sterling, and I could see that happening, to be honest.
Yeah, that'd be a good fight as well. I do think Jan's due a defence before the end of the year, so hopefully Sterling is the guy who gets it. And as you said, he's been a bit quiet lately, and he's not really someone who tends to be quiet, so that might be a good sign, but hopefully it is. And this is a really fun fight, and I think whoever wins this fight is in a really strong position, and he probably only need one more win to get another title shot, so it's a huge fight.
Yeah, and in the co-main, we have Edson Barboza versus Mac One Amikani. Obviously, Edson, I think his last fight was at featherweight against Dan Ige, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a controversial loss. It was a close decision. Whereas Mac One, I can't remember who he fought last, but he came out and got a submission win and looked pretty impressive doing it. So this is an interesting fight, because it seems on paper the striker versus the grappler, doesn't it? And Barboza's definitely gotten better at his grappling. He's looked pretty impressive, like on the ground when he fought Felder and they grappled for a little bit. He looked like he knew what he was doing. Looked like he was quite safe. Can he last on the ground with Amikani? It's another question. What do you think of this fight?
I think it's a huge fight, and Barboza just needs to win. He's been unlucky in his last 2 fights. They've both been split decisions, I think, against Paul Felder and Dan Ige. Mm-hmm. So I thought he beat Dan Ige. The Paul Felder one was a bit closer, and at first I didn't like the drop to 145, but I think he looks good at it. He looks strong. He looks big. He looks everything. He took good punches against Ige as well. So and he's been known to get hurt at lightweight, so maybe it'll help him. I think he needs to win. I think this is like sink or swim. He needs to beat Amikani. I don't think there should be anything. I think he should be a pretty considerable favourite as well. It's not like Amikani is one of the top contenders. Is he in the top 15? I'm not even sure. So I think he needs to beat this, and I think he needs to make a statement win. Barboza's here. He's a true contender, and that's what's got to happen. Whereas Amikani will be looking to pick up potentially the biggest winners of his career. So it's huge.
Yeah, he'll be looking to build that name off Barboza. And if he does, like, if he's not in the 15 now, which I can't see here, but I don't think he is, if he's not, he definitely will be off this win should he get it. It just sucks for Barboza, in my opinion, because he came down to featherweight, fought Dan Ige, who was 11 at the time, I do believe, and he, in my opinion, won. And even if he didn't win, he looked fantastic. He looked incredible. So I don't know why they didn't give him another top 10 guy, because he can definitely get in there with them and mix it up. But we'll see how he does in this one. And like I said, it'll be a good showing for him at featherweight. See what he's capable of. Hey, there's another guy from your way fighting on this card. I saw his debut. Tom Espinel fighting Alan Baldo. I don't know anything about Alan Baldo. I don't know. Is he a debuter? There's no image next to him.
Yeah, I think Espinel was meant to be fighting Spivak, who's just pulled out. So this is a late replacement now.
Right.
It's
you go.
Sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say, Espinel looked really impressive in his first one. Came out and got a quick finish. So hopefully in this one he can do the same and start building his name.
I think that's what we're going to see. I think Spivak would have been more competitive, but in terms of UFC debut, I'm obviously rooting big time for Tom Aspinall, but he had one of the easiest touches you can ever hope for. Jake Collier, if you don't remember, he's a middleweight, he come into heavyweight, and he looked like, they just pulled him from a burger shop or something like that. So without being disrespectful, he is a middleweight. That's where he should be fighting. And it was an easy debut, and it only gets harder from here. So Espinel, it's a nice touch, and it was nice to I think he even got a bonus for that as well. So it's a nice easy 50k, but they're gonna get harder. This guy on a late replacement, he's gonna be a tougher fight, and I do expect Espinel to knock him out, and then there's going to be tougher fights after that. But he seems game. He's got the power. He's got everything you want. So it's going to be fun watching his rise and seeing how far he can go with it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Is there any other fights in here you want to touch on, or are we got news?
Yeah, let's hit the news.
All right. First thing I've got here is probably not the biggest news, but it's still a good one. Dana White said Khabib was going to do the Ultimate Fighter with McGregor until McGregor blew it. Now, would you have wanted to see that season of The Ultimate Fighter? How realistic do you think it was that we would have seen that season of Ultimate Fighter? And just what are your thoughts on that?
I just think Dana's full of it on this one. I honestly do. But I don't understand why McGregor leaking messages about Dana would turn Khabib off that anyway, if he's into the idea. But I just don't think Khabib wants to spend 6 weeks alongside McGregor or however long the Ultimate Fighter is. It just doesn't seem very likely. And without these two coming to fight, like fighting every day, I just don't understand it. And I don't understand how much more value it puts on a potential rematch. I think the rematch is huge anyway. It's probably going to break all records. So why do you need another 6 weeks of build up and just taking away from everything? And it just doesn't seem to add up. And I think Dana likes to, float things out there, against his fighters sometimes. He's not always one to be believed. So I'd be interested in seeing it. I just don't think it was ever likely, and I don't think Conor McGregor leaking some messages on social media influenced it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I don't think it was ever going to happen because Khabib doesn't seem like the type of person who wants to spend, like you said, 6 weeks with Conor McGregor. And I imagine every interaction they'd have on the show would be too heated for the show. I mean, look at after he beat him in the ring, he jumped out of the ring and attacked his team. What do you think he's going to do if he's in opposing houses for 6 weeks? Like, it's not going to be a good thing. It's going to cause more drama for the UFC that they don't want. And yeah, I just don't think it was ever going to happen. But I will pitch you some good Ultimate Fighter coaches right now. The first one that comes to mind is Khabib on one side and GSP on the other. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. That would be more likely. Khabib, if Khabib was gonna do the Ultimate Fighter, I think it'd be more likely. But he doesn't. Does he speak great English, Khabib? Like, what type of TV would it be? Like, I'm not sure. Like, and then even the McGregor thing, Khabib would have all his coaches and his friends with him. McGregor would all have all his friends. It'd just be a battle every day. So I'd rather see Israel maybe do it. Like the next one is someone who's like he's clearly a very funny guy, and put him up against
you got it. I don't know. Jones, that's the one. Israel or Jones.
Yeah. And I think them two would be able to contain it a bit more, and they'd have more banter and things like that. So I think it'll be interesting. It seems like they want to go big with this latest season. They seem like they want to go and get the biggest star they can get and put him in Masvidal Covington. There's another one. If you want, Masvidal's a money man. He wants to make some more money. Put him a few weeks in the Ultimate Fighter. I'm sure them two can keep a lid on it. And so there's plenty of other options. I don't think that was ever one of them, man. I think Dana White is just, throwing a bit of mud at Conor because he's unhappy with him right now.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm telling you, the Jones-Izzy one is the one to do. You've already seen it with Jones. I think it's probably my favourite season of The Ultimate Fighter, the one where Jones coached alongside Chael. I think that was probably my favourite season. And, Jones was able to hold it in. He didn't start anything on the set, and it just made for good television. Now you put him alongside Izzy, who is a charismatic guy, knows how to speak, knows how to joke around, and I just think that's fireworks. And I think that is the big pairing they're looking for. And one thing that also makes me feel more excited if they were to do this would be that Dana White recently said that was the fight to make. So if they spend 6 weeks filming that, then 6 weeks after that they fight. That's crazy television, man. And it'll do loads of pay-per-views.
Yeah, I think that is something that could benefit from, some more, building on momentum. He's a star, but he's still a relatively new star. John Jones has been off the boil as of late, so I think it could do with a bit of hype and a bit of, just letting these two go at each other in face-to-face rather than social media. It just adds a new dimension to it, whereas we've already seen Khabib and Conor go at it face-to-face, social media, in the cage, so I don't think we need any more of that. So this is something that really makes sense, and if they're going to make that fight, I think this is the way to make it, and it'd be interesting to see if they can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll jump on to the next piece of news I have, which is Cody Garbrandt's out of his title fight at UFC 255. It'll now be Davison Figuerado versus Alex Perez, which in my opinion was the fight to make anyway, right? I thought it was either going to be Brandon Moreno or Alex Perez was going to be the next guy for that title shot. I didn't understand having Cody come down and get an immediate title match. So I'm excited to see this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm excited, and I'm more excited because what it's turned into is that, as I was asking the MMA gods last week when we were speaking, Moreno against Royval is a side piece of that. So yep. I'm more excited about that fight. I think that's fight of the year. It's got it written all over it. It's one of the best pieces of matchmaking in history, pretty much. I just don't see how this can be boring. I'm probably jinxing it now, but that's a brilliant fight. But back to this one, I think Alex Perez has earned his dues, and Cody's a name, and he seems to be having 135 and 125 title shots on his lap. So the UFC clearly think he's a big star, and he'll be back, and he'll probably get the next title shot. I think Figueiredo Perez is a good fight, and it probably won't sell as much as Cody, but he deserves it. So good for him.
I hate that I agree with you, but I hate it that Cody will come back and get straight in the title shot. You got these two awesome fights, like Perez versus Figueiredo is a fantastic fight in its own. Perez looked fantastic against Formiga in his last fight. He just attacked the legs and just annihilated him, really. Didn't have much to offer. Figueiredo looked brilliant in his title shot against Benavidez, both of them. He just looked fantastic. He looks like a world beater. So this is the fight that really, in my opinion, it'll just show who's the number one in the division, because obviously as Cejudo left, it was kind of like they pulled the two top guys, Benavidez and Figueiredo, whereas like there's the other guys like Perez there that they seem like they're on par with a Joseph Benavidez, but they just don't have the name value. So I'm keen to see this, and then like you said, Moreno versus Royval, awesome fight. You're probably right, fight of the year, unless someone gets finished quick, which could happen. And I would like to see the winner of that get the next shot after this fight. But like you said, it's probably going to be Garbrandt. But think about it this way. If Royval gets one up over Moreno in like fantastic style, like he has his last 2 wins, would he be the fastest shot to a title in like modern UFC history? 3 fights and then he gets a title shot?
It depends what you call modern, because Brock Lesnar was straight in there, wasn't he? And things like that. So, but that's such a quick rise to ascension. Like, to come in and beat Tim Elliott on your debut while he's still got a day job is huge. And then he quits that, he makes a 50 quid, and then he turns around straight again against Kai Carter France, who's been a contender for so long. It's huge. And then to beat Moreno, who I think is one of the best guys at flyweight, I think you could have made a case for him jumping in instead of Perez. I think it's that close at the top of that flyweight division. He's a really talented fighter. So it'd be huge if he manages to knock him out. Royval, in my mind, is a surefire thing for a title shot, but he's not going to get it because Cody unless he's seriously injured, they're going to make that because he's a more of established contender. Royval and Moreno are both fairly young guys. I think they're in the mid-20s, and Cody's probably in his 30s now. So I think the UFC will just, tell them, hold your horses, especially Royval, you've only bound, and he'll get it eventually. But I don't think having an extra fight or two for either of these youngsters can harm them really, because they need all the experience they can get when they're going in against Figuerado, who's looked a killer lately.
Let's be honest, it's going to be Benavidez for the winner of that. If they're going to take the time to do the Cody versus the winner of this one, the winner of the Brandon versus Brandon fight is going to be against Benavidez. That's my pick anyway. That makes the most sense, doesn't it?
I think either of them will be quite happy with that as well. Like Benavidez, although he's not had that UFC title, he's as big as it gets in terms of the lower weight classes, and I think a lot of these guys look up to him as someone who they've watched his entire career growing up and saying, I want to be like him. So to add him to your record is nearly as good as getting that title shot. It's the next best thing, and I think they'd both be pretty happy with it.
I agree. We'll move on to the next piece of news I have, which is Chris Weidman doubles down on Adesanya call-out, and he said in his call-out that he has two common opponents with Izzy, which are Silva and Gaslam, who he finished both of those. So he was kind of implying that he'd be some trouble for the champ. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think it's weird. I think it's very weird because Weidman's notoriously, one of the nicest guys in the game, and he's all of a sudden just decides to turn heel and start chasing a fight with Israel Adesanya, and it makes no sense on paper at all, because he's won two of his last seven. Mm-hmm. His win over Akhmedov was not impressive at all. I think after the fight I said to you, no one's going to be worrying about Weidman. He's got work to do, but he doesn't seem like he wants to do that, where he's going to, call for this fight and try and talk his way in. And the worrying thing is that someone must have told Weidman that if you can talk enough, you're going to get this easy fight, because why else would he be doing it? So the worrying thing is that he might actually get it, because the UFC are just looking for people to put in with Izzy. I'm not sure what's happening, but hopefully Adesanya realises he's got bigger fish to fry and doesn't entertain it. But for me, my conspiratorial mind, as Edson Barboza would say, is kind of worrying that who's told Weidman he's getting this fight, and why is he chasing it so much unless someone's guaranteed it? Because he must know on paper he's got no claim at all. So what's going on? I'm really confused with it. It is very weird.
If Weidman's in the top 10, he's got to be 9 or 8. And I can't imagine them giving someone that's ranked 9 or 8 a title shot, especially when that Jones fight is right there. And it makes a lot of sense, especially if Whittaker gets this win over Cannonier and they don't have a clear contender in the division. I think they move right on up to light heavyweight for the Jones fight, or potentially give him a fight with Jan Blachowicz. That might be something they do, But I think they do move on from middleweight if Whittaker gets this win over Cannonier pretty quickly too, because who else is there for Izzy to fight, But as far as his call-out, he forgot to mention their third common opponent, which Twitter was very quick to point out, was Yoel Romero, who finished Weidman in their fight with a devastating flying knee. I'm not really interested in seeing this fight in the slightest. If Weidman gets a few more wins, maybe I'll be interested. But at this point, he didn't look fantastic against whoever he fought last, who I am blanking on. So I'm just not interested in seeing him fight for a title anytime soon.
No, I'm really not interested at all. But if Israel wants to stay at middleweight and he doesn't want to fight Robert Whittaker, if he beats Cannonier, who's next? And then what you do? It's Is he want to go up to light heavyweight? Yeah. Does he want to, or is this going to force his hand? I'm not sure, but I find it weird, and I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit worried by it, that they might actually give him a shot. Because someone's told him to start mouthing off, and it seems like they're trying to engineer something from thin air, which is something I really don't want to see. And you could end up seeing these in an Ultimate Fighter season alongside each other. So it's a weird one. I hope I'm wrong and this isn't actually in the offing, but it looks like it is. And hopefully Cannonier just comes through and he takes everything else off the table, and that's the fight we get next, because I think he'll be a good challenge. Hey,
if he deals with Whittaker quick and gets a finish, then I'll be keen to see that fight. But if he edges a decision over Whittaker, I don't see him having as much to offer in a fight against Israel that Jones does. That is the fight I want to see. Maybe I'm just biased. Maybe I'll just convince myself that's what I want to watch. But hopefully we get that next. What other news do you have?
I just want to give a shout out to Bellator because they seem to have changed their tact in signings lately, and they're going for the younger guys. Whereas traditionally they get the UFC's cast-offs, which is it's the Machidas and the Phil Davises and all them lot, and the Titos. But now they've signed Usman Nurmagomedov, who's one of the biggest prospects in the sport. They've just got Brett Johns at the end of his contract with the UFC. He's a true contender. So I just wanted to shine some light on that Bellator are making very very shrewd moves in the market lately, and it's going to be interesting to see how they approach this moving forward and how it impacts their standings the second best MMA promotion.
Well, I think it's the right move, don't you agree? Like, sign these young guys, and they're going to build up in the organization, and they might not be these massive stars like they would if they were in the UFC, but the second they go from Bellator to the UFC, should they? And then if they smashing people in the UFC, that reflects so well on Bellator as an organization, bringing these guys up and really, hey, if they're Bellator's fighters that stay get wins over them, it makes it like this Michael Chandler thing. This is a good example of this. Chandler's going over to the UFC and he's getting an immediate title shot should someone miss weight, right? He's the stand-in. What do you think that makes it look like for the lightweight division in Bellator if Chandler is to go there and win a title in his first fight? I think, in my opinion, that makes who beat him? Pitbull? I think whoever's the champion in lightweight, I think that makes them look so much better because he's able to go to the UFC and win a championship. Not that it's going to happen, but should it happen, I think it reflects really well on Bellator. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it would, and I think it allows the fighters, if they sign with Bellator earlier, it allows them the chance to down the road negotiate a better contract with the UFC. Chandler has been around for so long and he's created his legacy in Bellator. And I think the most successful Bellator fighters are the guys they're bringing up themselves. It's not people they're bringing in and the getting the UFC Machida and people like that. They're not going on and having great success. It's not like anything like that. So I really do like this, and I hope they stick with it. I think there's lots of young contenders out there. Just for example, in Cage Warriors, I'm not sure if he'd be up for it, but in Cage Warriors, Mason Jones has just won 2 titles. He's got the lightweight and the welterweight. He's available. He's at Cage Warriors. He's sitting there. He's waiting to get called up to the UFC. Why not go in and try and sneak these young prospects before the UFC grab them? Just grab them earlier. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what they've done with Usman Magomedov. UFC's hesitated. Bellator have jumped in there and got a huge signing. So, credit to them, and I hope they stick with it, and I hope they start, challenging the UFC for the young, up and coming prospects rather than the old guard who the UFC are quite happy to let go.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. Is there any other news you had to speak on?
No, that's it. Really.
Let me just do a quick sweep here and see I'm not missing anything big. No, looks like it. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll speak to you next week to recap the event from the weekend and preview what's coming next.